because it won't wildly up or down.
Alright, good morning guys, coming at you with some more
It's
City
all the
Skylines
parts
2.
What would
We're
happen
gonna
if you just said,
hop
"Alright, it's all gone.
into
We're not paying."
the city that we've been working on today, or for a while, with the new Economy 2.0 patch. So far things are going pretty well.
Going to be foreign governments.
The game is still pretty messed up, but it's in a working state right now at least.
You wouldn't put it there unless you.
I'll probably be ending the stream a little early today, and it's probably going to be that way all week, because I'm doing something with some other programs that I'm running right now that's requiring a little bit extra time from me. I'll be on till like 9:30 Pacific time. But let's go ahead and hop into this and have some fun.
They would become instantly poorer. Their buying power would go down. But you might even be able to, work it out.
I'm listening to Scott Adams in the background. Get back up there.
But we say, we're not going to pay you back in dollars. We're going to pay you back in.
Scott Adams is a highly underrated thinker.
Well, maybe it is worth something.
In the modern age.
Change it to somebody who might have to give up 5% or something, but you'll basically get most of it, and you'll get it back in the timing you were going to. Maybe you'd have to limit how much they sell right away. You wouldn't want people. You want them to do an order. Now that would the effect of that would be to because if you introduce this new money and no. Wait. If you pay back all the loans, added money. But you would be adding it in a fairly orderly way, and it would eliminate $1 billion a year in Spain, which, by the way, is still adding to the debt, $2 trillion a year. If we took all the debt out, all the interest paid, it would take $1 trillion off of our. We wouldn't be anywhere near balance. Now, we got down to $1 trillion. And
thank you for the follow, Loveth Great. Appreciate it.
Magic. You survive with $1 trillion a year deficit? No. No, you couldn't. No, you can't. You would have to do something still radical to make that go away. Now, radical could be growth. For example, easily imagine that he said, I'm not going to raise your taxes. I'm going to raise taxes on the road. Now, the public wouldn't even quite understand that. They said, look, the robots are going to take your jobs. And anybody who can afford to have a robot is rich. So if you buy a robot, it'll be an and that tax will help that deficit. Because the robot, in theory, is so much more productive that you could pay a 10% tax on it instead of now, is everything I said sensible? No, it isn't. Would any of what I said work? Probably not. But here's what I'm adding. I've never described this before. First time if ever. One of the things that people like to add to the system in the country. What I add to the system is allowing you to think in a wider way. For example, when the pandemic first hit, I was among the first public figures saying we need to travel from China. Why I was doing it so loudly? Well, because it was an idea that people imagine as a possibility. Somebody who's got less to lose and needs to go out there and scream the thing that seems impossible for anybody. Because until you consider it, possibly do it, you have to get used to considering something that's way outside. If you need to do something. And when it comes to our deficit, there is no ordinary solution. You're going to have to do something you never did before, would never consider ordinarily, one time ever, and is so wildly improbable that even when I describe it, you shake your head and go, I don't know about that. That sounds like it's coming with a lot of problems. So the thing I can add is just make you think in a magic way. Wouldn't be perfect. Wouldn't be perfect. Is there some other way? And if the only thing it does make you say, oh, your idea is stupid for 10 reasons, you know what? Let's make me think of something that might work. You run this by. That's what we're doing. Let's brainstorming. And in addition to brainstorming, we're moving the envelope bigger so that the people who can make this do know what they're doing. Yeah, Warren Buffett, or somebody who knows what they're talking about. Maybe they can come in and say, you know what, that's a terrible idea, Scott. But as long as you've stretched the envelope, now I can talk about my idea. Would have sounded batshit crazy, or even I was. Once you've set the standard of crazy, now I've got to. This phenomenon is very useful. To give you another example, I always talk about my favorite news program, the Five, on Fox News. And one of the things I love about watching it is the end of the show. I always say the producers. One of the things they do really well, finding the show. Who they put with who, groups of people. And one of the things that makes Live so much better than what goes on is Greg Gutfeld. And what Gutfeld does is he always is stretching the limit of what you should say on TV and what you should say during a politically show, which allows all the other people to play in the playground that he defines. Because he takes the big, says, I'm going to say this, and then you can say something that you wouldn't have said before, but if Gutfeld hasn't been fired yet, you're probably safe. And you can see that effect playing out. It's really odd. But Gutfeld defines space and keeps it free. And then you see the other people who are great at what they do, but they're not necessarily the boundary stretcher. So that team of five, one boundary stretcher, then between Dana Perino on there, they can play within that space much safer here. The same thing. I think Trump does this as well. When Trump says, I'm going to use a border and build a wall and all that, whatever the extreme stuff is, makes the boundary of what is conversation bigger, then the normal people can come in, those and governors and people like that, and they can come in, they've got a bigger space. But somebody has to stretch it. I'm doing it here, Gutfeld does it on the 5, Trump does it in all. You need a stretcher, and then you need really capable people who can. That's what's happening. All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the conclusion of the greatest live stream you're going to see all morning. And you know what else is going on? Stock. Tesla up. Nuclear energy is up 100%. Let's see what else is there. Bitcoin's down. Bitcoin's out at a rough. And the S&P is tiny dip, and Apple's falling back. Not much, I think. So the story on Apple is their next update not have a new version of I are can't say it. That they will have AI in their system soon. But you're gonna have to wait till the spring, some people are saying, for the main voice of your Apple phone. It's a really long time. And, you know, I hate to bet against Apple, but boy, are they vulnerable to somebody coming in with when it was built to be an AI. And maybe it's never know. So that's what's happening today, ladies and gentlemen. End of my show. I'm going to go talk to the local subscriber.
Democrats are staging a coup against their duly elected nominee. I will stress that right now. News breaking is that Democrats are not seeing confidence in Joe Biden after this Georgia Stephanopoulos. They want him to step down. Donors are saying they will not give money to the Democratic Party if Joe Biden is the nominee. Recently, a phone call was had with top Democrat leadership in the House, and they said, get off the ticket. Joe Biden said, make no mistake, I am the nominee. I will not step down. This is interesting. Joe Biden is the duly elected nominee. Now, to be fair, the argument they're going to make is, no, not until the convention, when the delegates actually cast their votes. So the will of the people be damned. This is fascinating. Because even if they want to make the argument that Joe Biden is only the nominee after the convention, what they're basically saying is, popular vote, don't. Let me stress that. They had a primary, Joe Biden won. And now, wealthy elites are trying to boot from the ticket. I say Joe Biden is our nominee. I have been the staunchest Joe Biden supporter. You know, he's sharp as ever. Must remain on the ticket. Alright, well, here's what's really going on. Joe Biden's poll is collapsing. We got new updates. It's just getting worse. Democrats are right to want someone else on the ticket. But my question then is, what the is going on? The media lied to cover up for Joe Biden the whole time. Why do a debate at all? They didn't have to. Democrats could have played their game where they said, Donald Trump is a liar and we're not going to do a debate with him. And that's it. Did they think they were going to lose in the poll? Wait, the debate? Well, they put Joe Biden on that stage and he failed miserably. Now, all of the leadership is basically saying, get him out. Even his former staffers are like, Joe. Watch videos from Joe Biden years ago. He is a different, fine, rapid, alarming. Got a lot to break down coming off this holiday weekend. I hope you all enjoyed your 4th of July weekend and have put your American flags in celebration of MAGA month. All the lefty weirdos who hate America. The New York Post, coming in at the editorial report as updated this morning, Democrats are going to get Biden off the ticket. Now, of course, when you look at the polling, and let's do that first, let's jump right into the poll. This is going to blow your mind. 538 that normally shows polls favoring Democrats. Donald Trump up to. So of course, the New York Post back when they say they've got to get Joe Biden. Here we go. We've got Trump up 5. Let's just do this. July, we got Signal, 2 polls, Trump up 5. They include Kennedy, West, and Stein. Trump is still up. Daily Mail has Trump up 5. Against Harris, he goes up 11 points because she's next in line. I wonder, is she still the front runner? I think she is. See, we're predicted. And see, okay, so Kamala Harris is no longer the front runner I predicted. Sorry, Kamala, you were, but you're not anymore. So we've got Trump with Kennedy, West, Stein, and Oliver. And that puts Trump up 6 points. Twitter says Trump up 8 against Pritzker, Whitmer, Bashir, and Newsom. He's up 6, 6, and 8, 4 points. Now here's the interesting one. Twitter's put Michelle Obama on the poll. Michelle Obama is 12, and I think that may be the play. A lot of people have been saying it. We've mentioned before, a lot of people saying, yeah, but Michelle Obama doesn't want to run, she doesn't want to do it. None of that means anything. None of that means anything. Does or doesn't matter. Get another Reuters poll, Michelle Obama up 11 points, July 2nd. Now, while Trump dominates across the board against everyone, people say he won't beat Michelle Obama. Take a look at this in the 2020 RCP average. Trump is up 3.3. Now, I will tell you this. I'm not absolutely convinced Michelle Obama could. These polls say one thing, and a lot of people are pointing out, like, oh, but Michelle Obama, she's an Obama, she's popular, she'll get the diversity vote, like the leftist, the woke vote. And I'm like, no, I don't think you understand. I think it actually doesn't work that way. A lot of people think that they need Kamala Harris for the diversity vote, for the woke vote. I think they did that. I should say sort of. But it's not because people voted for Kamala Harris. The fact is, no one voted for Kamala Harris. She didn't get a single eye on the ticket, so that Joe Biden can say, look at me. I believe in diversity. And he gets his brownie points with white liberal women would on her own. And as evidence of, they didn't. Listen again, Kamala didn't get a single delegate. She did not get these votes. She's put on the ticket as a virtue signal. What I think happens with Michelle Obama as the head of this ticket. Now, it may work because Obama Harris, or may work because people like Obama. Don't forget what Barack Obama did. He brought Joe Biden on specifically because they were concerned people would not want to for a black man. Republicans show their true colors. Oh, that's right, I'm calling you Republicans. You show your true colors when you say Michelle Obama can win. It shows you're not racist. These Republicans are like, uh-oh, Michelle Obama is a charismatic woman, and she might be able to give Trump a run for his money. A lot of Republicans are saying that, and I'm like, guys, you gotta understand, Democrats are racist. They are racist. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being cute. Let me do this. Okay, just so I'll pull this one up.
Oh.
This is from Yale. Democrats are racist. White liberals present themselves as less competent in interactions with African Americans. Okay. Now I'm not saying that not a single Republican is racist or whatever. My point is, I do believe there is a substantial amount of Democrats and middle of the road people who aren't not going to vote for a black woman. First, you've got racists, and I'll tell you this: America is not racist. That's why they voted for Barack Obama twice. And it's not all about race. Better is a better candidate. But I do believe there is going to be. I believe there's probably way more sexism, especially in minority. So where these, you think it's going to be white people? No, I think Michelle Obama would actually do it. All people are going to say, "Oh yeah, of course." We'll see what the numbers actually turn out to. Here's the New York Post has to say. Biden insisted Friday that he won't drop out of the race unless the Lord Almighty tells him. Get ready for a lot of Democrats start publicly praying. Not so much to God, though, as to Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, and anyone else, shot at getting through Joe, who right now seems to be only listening to Hunter and Dr. Jill. The party's down-ballot candidates are freaking out, rightly fearing having a manifestly unfit for office guy at the top of the ticket will not only hand Donald Trump the White House, but elect a Republican House and Senate. I'm here for it. Obama's top electioneer, David Axelrod, is already telling the party's donors to close their purses to any candidate who won't call for Biden to drop out. Fat cats like Abigail Disney are on board. Sticking with Biden will kill the party's turnout in swing states and districts, and outright Democratic civil war to oust him in the convention every day. Conversation turns on Biden's condition. Today, the Dems take a look at this. We have a running list of Democrats calling for Joe Biden to drop out. Adam Smith, Jerry Nadler, Mark Takano, Joe Morrell, Angie Craig. What a big thing. Mike Quigley. Here goes another. Seth Moulton, Raul Grijalva. You've got Julian Castro, former Housing and Urban Development Secretary, writing on X. He's got to go. Texas Rep. Lloyd Doggett, Tim Ryan. Look at this. More to come. Right now, we have this from CNBC. Disney heiress, wealthy Democratic donors say they won't finance the party until Joe Biden drops out. This is from Thursday, July. We are seeing civil war against Joe Biden. Now from yesterday morning, several top House Democrats say Biden should step aside during leadership. This is what Batya Ungar-Sargon calls the anti-Biden coup. Writing an opening paragraph, something amazing has happened in the 10 days since Joe Biden and Donald Trump faced off in a presidential debate in Atlanta. Biden has come in for the kind of coordinated onslaught from mainstream media and Democratic power brokers that is usually reserved for Republicans. Biden's performance allowed the audiences of CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post, and The New York Times their first glimpse, something that journalists at those outlets had worked hard to conceal. Biden slurs his speech, and his thoughts are erratic, his glassy gaze unfocused. You know what worries me the most? We all knew this, right? We all knew this. But Joe Biden tweets, "Let me say this as clearly as I can. I'm the sitting president of the United States. I'm the nominee of the Democratic Party. I am staying in this race." Shout out to Greg, 16676935420, X, who's like a very well-known parody account. What is he at? Just about 1 million followers. How are you tweeting when you are on stage in Wisconsin right now? Get it. Joe Biden, not in charge, how this stuff works. Batya Ungar-Sargon tweets, "We are at the enacting a coup against a duly elected leader stage of defending democracy." See? Yep. Look, man, I am fed up with the Democratic elites and the establishment. These people are abject evil. I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't know what to say, but these people are evil. They lie, cheat, and steal every day. And perhaps that's always been the case. And perhaps only now, because of the internet, I often say, able to see beyond the veil and understand and behind the curtain. They've been doing. We think we know what's true. We don't know what's true. As always, just reported, establishment machine wants them to. I've been that way since Kennedy or even earlier. From Axios, Biden refuses to take cognitive test. Denies he's. Well, if he's denying that he's losing to Trump, that may be all the cognitive test you need, because the polls show it plain as day. The donors are saying it. This. Why doesn't care about anything? Who cares about his family? I respect that too. And Joe Biden's son, Hunter, being convicted. And he doesn't want his dad to drop out. Dr. Jill, oh man, she's the first. She doesn't want to give up. She wants it. However, she has to keep it. These people are despicable. They're the worst kind of people. Joe Biden is demented state. You know, I think it's fair to say demented. And the reason, and this is important, right? So there were some news stories where they said he doesn't have dementia, he got age-related cognitive. I understand the difference between cognitive decline. Now, if you're saying that he sometimes stumbles over words and he's a little forgetful, that's not dementia. It's just age-related cognitive decline. But when he confuses the names of countries and wanders the wrong way off stage, he is showing signs of dementia. Now, some are speculating maybe he has Parkinson's, because a Parkinson's specialist met with his doctor or something like that. I don't know. I think we know that he's suffering from something upstage. I think he may have moderate, slight form of dementia. But he's on stage. Okay, Donald Trump walks on stage for the debate. He walks off stage. Joe Biden, at various instances in the past few years, has walked the wrong direction. There was one where he's on stage, and he turns around, looking at the screen, the backdrop, and starts talking to him. That is not age-fine. That is, Joe Biden doesn't know where he is. When you see his hands outstretched in front of him with his fingers grasped like this, that is a sign of dementia. When you see the angry outbursts, these are symptoms typically associated with Alzheimer's and dementia. Say that really, the rage, I'll tell you what. You read about it, Google it. They say that the simplest way it's been explained to me by expert. You know that feeling you get when you're like, I can't, frustrated. And, I can remember the song, I can't remember the name. And you're like, how do I search for this? So frustrated. Imagine if that was every sentence, every time you tried to speak, you knew you had something to say, but you can't grasp it. You get so frustrated, angry. That's what we see with Joe Biden. He yelled at that union worker a couple of years ago, I don't work for you! Remember when that reporter was asking him a question and he just like snapping, repeating the same thing over and over? I could say, indicative of dementia. He's forgetting, getting angry, his brain's not working. It could be Alzheimer's, dementia. Age-related cognitive decline would be like him going, you know what was the... That's not what he's doing. When he's wandering off stage with his hands, the worrying thing to me is when his fingers are twisted. Look at his hands. When he's doing the portfolio and walking, you can see his muscles are contracted in his hands in a strange way. I'm telling you. Axios says President Biden flatly ruled out taking a cognitive test or submitting to an independent medical examination to determine if he has any neurological conditions, insisting he has had the energy and ability to run for president to defeat Trump. In an interview with ABC George Stephanopoulos, the president avoided verbal flubs and unfinished sentences defined his disastrous debate. Really? Or maybe it's an edited interview. However, more important, as many on the right have explained it, they've said it was a really great interview. Joe Biden didn't do anything to the point where they could justify it. Certainly didn't do anything. So he does an interview. People are still concerned over his mental state, but it wasn't such a disastrous interview where they could pull him. If he did this interview, it was as bad or worse than the debate, off the ticket. But it was okay. So everyone's like, okay, he's still tired, making excuses, but he didn't lose. Funny thing is, in this interview, Biden's like, I was traveling around the world. They advised me not to do it. And Stephanopoulos is like, you had 6 whole days of rest before this debate was enough. And Biden's like, I had a cold. I'm like, that's how we yell. I appreciate him giving. You got these videos of people clapping at these events, and let them do it. Get a goal, give the excuse. Let them keep Joe Biden. Get right here. Now look, I got no guarantees, you got no guarantees that Donald Trump can actually win against Joe Biden. And right now, I think the one thing you got to be careful of, and I need all of you to say this, to talk about this. They run this news. Oh, we got to get Joe Biden out, he's the worst. And you start to believe, oh man, if they keep Joe Biden on the ticket, we can't lose. Yes. Remember, Trump supporter, we couldn't possibly lose this guy. Because there's going to be a shadow campaign. I don't know, ask Time Magazine. I don't know what they mean by shadow campaign. They pulled that one up. Because they love to claim there's no conspiracy or whatever. I don't know, man. Is Time Magazine conspiracy theory? Secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. Which they refer to as a conspiracy behind the scenes that curtailed the protest supported from CEOs. Help stop Donald Trump. Time Magazine says there was a conspiracy to stop Donald Trump. They call it a shadow campaign. That American democracy? These people are loaded, that they have burned our institutions to the ground. I look over at France and Marine Le Pen's party is the largest party in every single day in Paris. But because left, they are not the majority power. That's Parliament. Parliament is not the same as winner take. It works in France, and actually I should say this. The way parliamentary systems tend is that you have an election in your area, and you have, let's say that there are 10 representatives that are going to be sent from. If your party gets 60%, party gets 40, six of those people, your party, 4 will be. Don't do winner. They actually say, okay, here's how many seats party based. And I suppose that makes a lot of sense. Problem is, you end up in situations with France where if a corrupt party brings in more and more people who's the interest of it's impossible. Now that's true too for the U.S., but the founding fathers knew we needed protection for big groups in the country, which is why college. Democrats are outraged. They don't like the idea that the minority party actually gets a chance. But that was the intent. Two wolves and a lamb deciding on what's for. The public is a lamb content. That's America. The Electoral College system ensures that sometimes minority the opportunity. Very smart. They said, what happens if you have a consistent 45% minority group that never get anything? 5% angry people. Age revolution. You're talking about just shy of half the country, so they can't win a direct democracy. Their interests aren't being upheld, and almost half the country. Yeah, you're in for a world of hurt. Unless these people have appropriate representation, which means sometimes minority. Democrats don't like that. They want to make sure that can never happen. Never can happen. So many articles about Joe Biden, even know. Critics pile on Biden following ABC interview. Last, his refusal to cognitive test disqualified. I certainly agree. No, ladies and gentlemen. But look, I think Joe Biden should be the nominee. I don't like Joe Biden. I think the brain doesn't work. They voted for him. If they pull him out now, it's clear this was a scheme, a scam on the American people. We should not tolerate it. They wanted to block RFK Jr. That was the play. If they had a real primary, RFK Jr. would be the nominee. They'd have locked him out, shut down the primary, and now swap him out the last minute right before the convention. It's going to be chaos. And you know what? Democrat voters will let him do it. So we will see. Welcome back. Holiday weekend. I hope you're all out with family. Back with the next segment at 1 p.m. on this channel with more news here. We're going to save it for 1 p.m. Smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, follow me on X, and we'll be back at 1 p.m. Thanks for hanging out. See you.
As the New York Times noted last week, Old Joe admitted to his allies that he knew he had only days left to salvage his candidacy at debate, and this was before the intervention, big sit-down with George Stephanopoulos, which was supposed to reassure the Democrats everything was just fine. It was just a big fluke because of jet lag and cold, but he forgot that the debate even happened.
Did you ever watch the debate afterwards?
I don't think I did, no. So now it looks like they're going to try to push him out, but they are also realizing that all roads lead to ruin, because they keep him in, it's going to be a disaster. They swap him out for Kamala Harris. It's going to be a disaster. They swap both of them out, trying to bring in Gavin Newsom, who knows who. It's going to be a disaster. This is the new cover of The Economist magazine, showing a Walker presidential seal attached, saying no way to run a country. And just a few weeks ago, this would have been a meme. Now this is a cover of a major. Now there are a growing number of Democrats, and not just political pundits, but first Democrat members of Congress calling for Old Joe to step down. Equally devastating, our major Democrat donors are saying that they're not going to donate anymore to this campaign until he steps down. The New York Times reports major Democrat donors devise plans to pressure Biden. The Washington Post wrote a withdrawal speech for him, posting this bizarre article. What if Joe Biden spoke these words? Then they literally wrote an entire column imagining what his withdrawal speech would be. To be clear, they didn't write things that he would or will say. They wrote it in the first person as if it was his speech. Blah, blah, blah. Our country is fantastic, or so it used to be. Then they get to the point here. Over the past few days, I have been reflecting on all this. My season of service is nearing its end. This is a hard truth to face, is the natural course of things. Different as the progression from spring to summer, fall to winter. This is why I have decided to withdraw from the campaign for president of the United States. The George Snuffleupagus interview from Friday made him very well sealed his fate. There's probably no coming back from this, and we may be hearing a major announcement in the next few days.
Would you be willing to undergo independent medical evaluation that included neurological and cognitive tests and release the results to the American people?
I have a cognitive test every single day. Every day I got that.
Every day he was asked the same question back in 2020, although he was quite a bit more defensive. Paul?
Please clarify specifically, have you taken a cognitive
No, I haven't taken a test. Why the hell would I take a test? Oh, man. That's like saying you, before you got in this program, you're taking tests where you're taking cocaine or not. What do you think, huh? Are you a
What
junkie?
do you say to President Trump?
Well, sir, maybe one of the reasons you should take that test is because you recently identified yourself as a black woman.
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, first vice president, first black woman, black president. Proud of the first black woman in the Supreme Court. There's just so much that we can do because together there's nothing. Look, this is the United States of America.
He can't even finish a single sentence at this point, and he's gotten so bad that even the comedians feel bad about making jokes about it. Here's Jamie Kennedy.
Well, the debate last night was very bad. And that's why. Do you have all your cognitive abilities?
But we shouldn't get our hopes up too high because most Democrats will vote for ham sandwich if it identifies as a Democrat. It may actually come down to the delegates at the convention. They ultimately decide who party's nominee.
Y'all just tell me who the nominee is going to be. Let me know when you guys are fighting amongst yourselves who I got to vote for in November to keep Hitler out the White House. That's all I want to know. Who I got to vote for to keep Hitler out the White House. Y'all do your thing. Play in traffic all you want in front of these Republicans, acting a fool in front of these people instead of privately declaring your stuff. But don't text me no more, because I'm not taking no more text. Just let me know when you guys are finished figuring it out, Democrats, because I know y'all are freak out people. Get a freak out, have your conversation, and then let me know who I got to vote for to keep Hitler out the way. That's it, I'm done.
And it seems they may be leaning towards Kamala Harris, hopes of avoiding being called the most devastating name in the English language to a Democrat, a racist.
The president, and I know you will remember this, back in 2020, referred to himself as a transition candidate. He also said back then that he would be a bridge to the next generation of Democratic leaders. Does he still?
Yes, I mean, I think his statement stands. I mean, one of the reasons why he picked the vice president, President Kamala Harris, is because she is indeed chair of the party. And he's very proud to have partnered with her and continue to partner with her and delivering an unprecedented record.
Which is why they have kept completely under wraps, because every time she comes in front of a camera, just like old Joe, she makes a complete fool of herself.
Which brings me to May 30th, 2020. Bob and Doug returned to Kennedy Space Center. Suited up. They waved to their families, and they rode an elevator up nearly 20 stories. They strapped in their seats and waited as the tanks beneath them filled with tens of thousands of gallons of fuel. And then launched. Yeah, they did.
It's going to be sad if you lose old Joe as the Democrat Party nominee, especially if he drops out or step down before the next presidential debate against him. But if that happens, I can't think of a more unlikable, unqualified, and annoying person than Kamala Harris take his place.
I love Venn diagrams. I really do. I love Venn diagrams. It's just something about those three circles and the analysis about where there is the intersection, right? Yeah, I see people, you agree with me, right? So, okay, so I asked my team, I brought problems.
But brace yourself, because there's even more cringe to come. This is an actual campaign ad that they put together and aired on BET, Black Entertainment Television, during the BET Awards.
Raji. Oh, hello, Madam Vice President. I thought maybe you blocked my number. I mean, you called Clinton Teeth when she opened her show, you didn't call me. I had to call you. Is it because I don't have anything? No, Taraji. Now, you know I wouldn't do that, especially not to a fellow bison. For real, ain't you? You know. So what's on your mind? Madam VP, I'm worried about the election. His reproductive rights are on the line. Our Supreme Court is on the line. Our basic freedoms are being taken. Madam VP, I know you've been traveling across the country. What?
The celebrities have a
Yeah,
direct
girl, I'm out here in
a
these
direct
streets,
line to
and
the
let me tell
presidency,
you,
don't
you're
they?
right, Taraji. There is so much at stake in this moment.
There sure is, but you know what? Maybe Gail Face deserves the nomination instead of Gavin Newsom, because she's been very loyal to old Joe. Not anybody can stand in front of the American people and make such bold-faced lies like this. This was her after the special counsel report came out, announcing they were not going to indict old Joe for stealing classified documents. Feeble old man with a poor memory.
So the way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated. Gratuitous.
They're already upset that the New York Post admitted the obvious by saying that America may soon be subjected to the country's first DEI president, Kamala Harris, causing Gavin Newsom to respond that, number one, Joe Biden is our next president, and number two, this is straight up racist. So buckle up, because we're in for a wild ride. And be sure to order your Teflon Don 2024 shirt from my online store, markdice.com, or the MAGA Mafia shirt, Guilt to Heaven shirt, a Trump Total Eclipse 2024 shirt, or any of my awesome designs. Now most available in a tank top as well. So head on over to markdice.com or click the link in the description below and check them out.
If we're replacing testosterone to the level that we,
not necessarily at the same times, but to maintain like a balancing act in the body.
so we have a real sense of how to dose, for example, testosterone or estradiol in the case of HRT for women, because we know what physiologic normal levels are during various periods of a person's life. And so if we're replacing testosterone to the level that we think is normal, either for your age or some earlier age, we can measure the hormone, we administer it, and we can do the calculation. Hey, this person has a lot of sex hormone binding globulin, or they don't, or whatever the case might be. When people are administering growth hormone, and again, let's just talk about this through the lens of the context you're talking about it now, which is, rejuvenation, or, longevity, the wastebasket term. How do they know that, because typically they're using about 1 to 2 units per day. Isn't that the typical dose?
Yeah, it depends largely on liver function too. So some people with compromised function, or type 1 diabetics, for example, they could have super high GH production, but very low IGF-1 from seemingly lack of insulinogenic signaling, because it also has a positive relationship with IGF-1 production. But it can be difficult, because you could have a person on a ketogenic, calorie-deprived diet model who has an IGF-1 that is on the low end of the reference range, be manually administering growth hormone and be using a higher dose than would otherwise be necessary to get to high normal, optimal function, marks. So that's the best proxy we have, as far as I'm aware, is that serum biomarker IGF-1, but there's not really, cut and dry way to.
So people would use the Z-score, presumably, of their IGF-1 as the dosing, as the output for determining how much GH to administer.
Yeah, my understanding is that regardless if it's idiopathic short stature, GH deficiency, they would use IGF-1 as a metric to kind of dial in the dose. So if your IGF-1 is higher than the target, then you would dial the dose back accordingly, or if it's not high enough, then you would.
And what do they target? A Z-score of 1 to 2, meaning 1 to 2 standard deviations above the mean is therapeutic, or just being above 0, for example, which means you're above the 50th percentile?
The target for, I think it's mainly just correcting, but as far as what is correct, I guess the reference range, if it's in the middle or the high end of normal, I don't recall off the top of my head, but it's something in the neighborhood of middle of a standard LabCorp reference range as far as I know. Could be off on that.
So, okay, so let's talk about the physiology of this. So, you give GH, there's a feedback signal because GH comes from the pituitary, but it's spoken to by the hypothalamus. So, we're going to talk about this again when we talk about testosterone, of course, because that's a really obvious issue. So, what happens upstream of the pituitary, i.e., what happens to the signal from the hypothalamus to the pituitary to make endogenous, to make your own growth hormone when you take it from the outside? Does that get shut off as well?
Yeah, the negative feedback that I spoke about briefly, when you have elevated IGF-1, it will give negative feedback, and there is elevation, something called somatostatin, which is like basically tells your body don't make as much GH essentially. And there is different receptors, which gets a bit confusing as to how you produce the growth hormone upstream. There's the ghrelin receptor, which super confusingly is also called like GH receptor, I believe it's also called. And then you have the GHRH receptor and the production of GHRH endogenously, as well as the agonism of ghrelin receptors, can both stimulate growth hormone. And the way by which they achieve your end output can be different. That's different actual patient, typically GHRH, HRPs to get sorts. This is why also fasted significant output via the ghrelin receptor agonist.
This is the same ghrelin hormone management.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, ghrelin is the primary, but probably accepted that signals ghrelin receptor agonism is what main. So, for example, if you gave somebody a agonist like glutamoran, is GHRP, you use that even if you're not hungry, eat your pantry. Same. So that compound, GHRH, will seemingly downward metastatin activity, simultaneously increase the output from the pituitary to produce more GH, so you can kind of like max out your endogenous production through these peptides, essentially. Okay. Are the mechanisms involved? Receptor feedback.
So if someone is just taking exogenous growth hormone, and how long would they need to take it before sort of complement their own endogenous growth hormone?
I think it's pretty quick. Not instant, like in the serum, you H spikes in about minutes, so it's in your system very short. IGF-1 conversion can increase over days and then stay elevated for days, and this is why IGF-1 started to be a potential way to catch people doping out in the HGH isoform assay, which is the accepted gold standard they use. If I'm going to stay elevated a relatively long period of time.
Let's just say a person's on GH for 2 years, then they stop it. Does the pituitary go back to making GH?
Yeah, seemingly flexible.
So in that sense, it's different than LH and FSH and the testes making testosterone.
Yeah, and the reason for that, I can't help but think there's, because there's multiple actions, the pituitary is not going to atrophy the same way. I think it is speculative. For example, if I anabolic ears don't take HCG fertility, will I get stored for in short order? And it seems to be like use it or lose it kind of thing, where not necessarily, but it's somebody severely atrophied, has not had stimulation directly for years. This is the pituitary. Imagine that the maintenance of oak maintaining its flexibility to some extent. Good perspective.
Let's talk a little bit about the use of GH in restoration of tissue during period. So I think there is some accepted medical use for GH in burns, for example. Right? So if a person sustains a significant enough of their body surface area is burned, I mean, that's one of the most catabolic activities a human can sustain, and therefore some of that anabolic demands that a human can sustain as an adult. What about during orthopedic injuries? So look at a person who's having either elective or emergent surgery. I'll give you an example. So we've had patients who have had injuries, so like a bicep, and we've looked at the literature, found, I would say, it's modest evidence suggesting maybe for that person, an 8-week course of anabolic steroids recuperation. The few times we've done this, we've seen great outcomes, but that means nothing. So contrapositive, opposite view there. What would happen otherwise? So, do you have any insight, either from kind of literature or from just kind of the underground work, as to what the use of vast amounts of growth like in periods of rehabilitation?
Yeah, it's anecdotal. So you could
there's just no counterfactual stories.
Yeah, and oftentimes when we're talking about this stuff, I want necessarily founded literature. It's kind of mix of extrapolations, studies, anecdotes in humans, stuff like that, which is actual statements every time we stuff. But with GH, anecdotally, it seems to be effective. I think it's worthwhile. Makes sense. So I see people, but again, it's not like you have a control of the same guy, injury, not taking it. So what you discern to be a reason seems like it's recovering quicker than would have expected. Good.
Yeah, I think I've been told this a year and a half ago. I had shoulder surgery. I was so, really this was an operation I, postponing for 15 years until it got right. And I was so hesitant to give up so much because of the size of the tear in the labrum. It was going to be, before I could, other than. So my plan was to take. I did a little bit of. Came to the conclusion a certain cocktail of Androlone is going to be the best cocktail.
That's so interesting that you didn't use a piece of testosterone. You could effectively wipe out your.
Interesting. Well, I ended up taking it for a total of 1 week.
Yeah, I noticed. Yeah, I saw that post on Facebook and how pressure elevation and
the glucose went up, my blood pressure went up, temperature was up at night. Now, in retrospect, what I was sick. I think I actually got and anyway, so I don't think it had anything to do with this, but I felt so bad on the hormone.
Yeah.
So, I'm the counterfactual, I suppose, not having done it. which of course means I still don't know. I still have no insight into what this is, but I do find this interesting. Like you, I do find it concerning that this is a question that isn't studied. I understand that there isn't really a financial incentive to study this because there's not really a great, it's not something that is a new drug. Recombinant GH has been around for years now, hasn't it? The 80s?
Yeah. Average around 80s, assuming.
Yeah. So anyway, it is a shame because I've talked to many orthopedic surgeons, and to a person, they all say the same thing, which is I really wish we knew this question. Like it would really be wonderful to study this closely and we make a difference in some patients by using these things in a very opportunity. And the other question I guess I'm wondering is, because I can't find a clear answer to this, do you have a sense of the use of growth in osteopenia?
Yeah, one thing I can say, back to the justify, if it makes sense or not. I think there's certain things you can use to discern better idea, like baseline IGF-1, ketogenic diet, and you're trying to do simultaneously, or there are certain things that make it, that could otherwise be significantly influencing your recovery capacity from a factor standpoint. Backfill naturally have micromegaphone. Not huge, obviously. So it's definitely or get insulin resistance at baseline or something may otherwise sway you of the sense first. I'm not gonna. I think that should at least be said to people. Nice thing.
That's right. Yeah, it's good.
As far as its effects on bone health,
and let's throw the same caveat in. So let's say we're talking about an individual osteopenia, osteoporosis. Let's assume further you're going to do all the nutritionally with respect to the calcium, amino acids, base load, strength training, if necessary, Fosamax and the type of things that may help in that. And if in the context of all those things, an individual has a low IGF, do you think, first of all, is there any evidence that that setting, GH administration will improve bone density?
Yes, but I would, even if it didn't, I would say not a shadow, especially in somebody with low. I have to circle back. Anybody, especially with IGF-1, you can discussion of even sustain adequate integrity, especially in age where you might have in with, certainly justified saying
that's interesting. I'd like to find show notes because I feel like the last time I didn't find anything that suggested not doing it, but I didn't find something that was slam. You mentioned a couple of peptides, so let's talk about these peptides that are upstream. So I can't even keep track of how many. There's like CJC, Samora.
So on the GHRP side, the easiest way to segregate these is by GHRP, GHRH. GHRP are the ones that act on ghrelin receptor. GHRH are the ones that look very GHRH and that receptor. I think that's the easiest way to segregate them in terms of category. They're pretty different in how they affect things. Like, for example, ipamorelin, anti-aging clinics and what.
Sorry, the GHRP one's also going to hyperphagia.
Yeah, so depending on, this is the weird thing about it. So even if you are stimulating the ghrelin, the effects on appetite are quite different. So for ipamorelin, for example, despite the fact that that's the receptor it's working through, agonist to even any reasonable MK677, I mean, that difference in 2,000 calories by choice, but you're starving.
So it's almost like it's inducing Prader syndrome or something, which is a condition where uncontrolled.
Yeah, like the willpower necessary to 677.
So what's the clinical use case for that? Is it used in AIDS wasting, cancer wasting, and things like that?
Really active, so adherence is much more reasonable to expect. It's the application, it's not FDA approved, but it is GH deficient children, and we've seen restoration of IgG. Low end IGF. I'm not going to push you into super physical capacity, but you can kind of max out what your potential is. Similar to, HCG or something, you can kind of manually stimulate the upper threat capacity. So it seems to be efficacious in that,
but not going to have a high application among adults who don't need an extra 2,000 calories.
No, but it also depends, because some people maybe have low appetite and you want to gain weight, or state of appetite is suppressed. What you're using depends on the context, and that's
So what is the FDA approved indication for this drug?
It is for use deficiency, but it's also like, even though it's prescribed and whatnot, achieved FDA.
So how is this oral? How does this peptide survive the gastric environment?
But it is the only one I know of that is often viewed as an efficacious option HRP to restore different. So how the actual genetic profile looks is that hours,
and it must just be enterically
not hepatotoxic. I remember. It's got to be something that.
Any other GHRPs that are worth discussing?
Yeah, I think ipamorelin is probably the one I've been in clinics, and that one seems to be in the outcomes you'd want to see out of like using peptide, in that you get enhancement of sleep, doesn't make you hungry, really, even though it operates through the same receptor pathway. This is IGF-1. It is but these are two. Ipamorelin is the primary one. It's like GHRP6, GHRP2, which significantly impactful on hunger. Reach of blood, food intake. MK677 is around the clock with GH6. After you inject it, you can modulate acute eating content. Okay. Regular, eat your 5,000 a day. That's when you need to look disgusting when saying it.
No, I mean, it's, I think there's so much done there.
Emeralin is one that is prescribed most often.
And that's a daily injector.
Yeah.
And so is that used by athletes and bodybuilders?
Yeah.
Is it cheaper than?
Yes. So depending on if you get the growth. The pharmacies, certainly. Generic editions that are pretty cheap now. But I use it. High quality HGH from China.
By comparison, what would that cost at a pharmacy in turn? Yeah, I mean, it's insane.
Especially if it's like back in the day, AIDS patients and to sell their stuff. That's what bodybuilders used.
Okay, so on the GHRH side,
Tessamorelin. Tessamorelin seems to get sub-efficacious, but Tessamorelin umbrella is kind of the primary utilized, especially now.
So they combine it, though. Tessamorelin.
Yeah, typically. And there's also TJC 1255, and there's with B-complex, which extends that.
And CJC 1295X is which one of these?
GHR8.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then there's a shorter.
These are not FDA-approved compounds. These are literally Wild West of compounds.
Some of them have.
I mean, Tessamorelin. So,
yeah, some of them have. I know one of them. Lipodystrophy.
Yep.
And there are some unique applications of it. Some of them have the approval to most of them. GHRP6, GHRP2X, and a couple of the GHR8 and MK677. It's kind of weird because it's like, this stuff is not no company that makes a branded FDA approved version. Make it questions and standards like making it China similar to another.
yeah, there are no standards. I mean, there are no standards. That's the whole point. They don't have to. They can make sort of anything. I mean, at this point, the real question is, where is the line between a GRAS? So if something has a GRAS designation, say by the FDA, you can sell it on Amazon. So it's an over the counter. Which would be, what's the most potent GRAS thing out there? Which in other countries require. Other countries, DHEA is, I think, appropriately treated as a hormone.
That's scheduled.
Is it really? Oh, interesting.
I don't know. Actual steroid. That's Russian.
That's amazing. Yes, but in the US, DHEA, amazingly, is over the counter. So that means it has a GRAS designation. I'm guessing that, CJC 1290 does not have a GRAS designation. You cannot sell it without a prescription, but yet it doesn't have an IND. It's not an investigational new drug. It hasn't gone down the pathway of an approval. But I think it's just sort of in this gray area.
Some of them are abandoned. Be like a drug that was in a pipeline.
Yep. So maybe there was an IND in it.
Yeah, so it's, sometimes financial, is it efficacy, is it in some cases delta agonist, actually pretty good management, exercise movement. You look at the metrics that it improves, rates of study, every dose by cancer. Was, is that right? No reason why publicly it got scrapped, but it's weird because it was supposedly canceled is to in humans. Some of the stuff and Carter.
But yet all the rodents who took it got cancer?
Yeah, every dose.
I mean, that would be disconcerting. Okay, so again, talking about this through the lens, I have one patient, by the way, who came to me having been prescribed some oral inside. I asked him to stop because I'm like, look, I'm not going to take over the position on that because I don't know what. So he did, and like I don't know, a year later, he's like, look, I really want to be back. I've just never felt the same since I was on it. It just gave me such a feeling of vitality and a lot of reasons. It's the thing to be on. And I said, look, man, I'm not going to be that guy who says no just to say no, but I need to understand this a little bit. And I think we need to think through what are the risks and benefits of this. And so we kind of negotiated this back and forth for 6 months where I said, look, I guess if we a really good cancer screening and can convince ourselves that you don't have cancer. We gallery blood test, colonoscopy, like basically to the level of detection of our modern technology, you don't have cancer at the moment. I'll be happy to find an endocrinologist who's more comfortable, and we did. So we found a great endocrinologist. Okay, and he went and saw her and prescribing it as happy as can be. And again, I get this isn't to me like this isn't. It's not a judgment around this. I'm genuinely curious, and I still can't make sense of. Would you want to be on Smorolin? Smorolin. It sounds like you're saying Tess is better than Smorolin, and could just be anecdotal versus growth. And then of course I never really understood the stacking where you start to stack both. So do you get the sense that hitting both targets, both receptors, is better than just using GH? Like give more specificity?
One thing you could say for certain is production. Production spectrum variants, so there's different isoform HGH is doping, and these variable beats outputs pituitary. We don't know why they are put out in different. That's essentially. They have different actions in the way that facilitate straight. So when you take recombinant HGH, you are pain like more. You are actually losing the production variant. Mutations are if that's effective. Obviously we can manually push your IGF to super physiologic, which homogeneous kind of sorts of peptides. Kind of manually just choose where you go with it. So there's certainly a case to be made, just like with testosterone. Generate bigness, firm, have you watch pathways when you can just take a straight hormone, manually pick where you want. And oftentimes that could be answers. It's like a very target end goal in those for it essentially output relative to the input of those peptides because you have capacity. So there's definitely potential pros and cons. And if you have good functioning higher pituitary, the output satisfactory from a standpoint to natural peptide useful, you're getting to all the endogenous, you know exactly what you're getting. You can manually choose the what you're getting out of it, and I think it's to be reserved for don't have the natural output that they are trying to get out of the peptides, so they respond that. There's just
is there kind of an analogy here where taking growth hormone, exogenous is like taking testosterone, whereas taking the peptides is like taking clone?
Yeah, I would say, with exception that you're not blocking negative feedback, you are positive.
Correct. Clomid works by
so it would be like to be an HCG and recombinant FSH or HMG.
So, what does the literature say, and what does the non-literature say about the GH alone in combination in terms of its capacity to help cell and oxidize fat?
Yeah, the so sparse to say without a shadow of a doubt that it's to enhance muscle potential and especially like very new studies that really show it. So I think what is clear in the literature body recomp effects. So being able to
You do gain lean mass. Part of that presumably tension. You lose fat mass.
yeah, and for dystrophy, if you're fatty acids and be able to actually improve utilization of substrate, you could absolutely improve body comp significantly with it. But when it comes to actual muscle, very wishy-washy, and certainly something that you should hang your hat on. Reason why you're taking it. So from a muscle growth perspective, does anything significant enough by its use, bodybuilders. Some think it's an expensive fat burner. Some think it's like quite useful and make huge changes. It also very responds a dynamics perspective. And think incorporate muscle growth. That said, assumes that to be ignored. Kinetic perspective, certainly looks good on a bodybuilding side, may not necessarily have the function. Yeah, you may not get enhanced force. Seeking from true anabolic agents doesn't improve cosmetic muscle, certainly, and improve your body, especially if you well with. Because if you just use it and fatty acids and nothing, seeking. So
do you think that the liberation of fat is the more reproducible finding issues?
Oh yeah, and you know that's happening. Use it, and you'll lead insulin resistance.
So based on that knowledge, when is the ideal time to? Do people take this once a day, twice a day?
Depends on the dose. As if you're using a very high dose, certainly want to, and it also depends on lethargy from it. It is very lethargy inducing. You can feel sleepy if you're using a high dose.
What would be a high dose? Like what you were taking, 6 to 8?
Yeah, I would say, and when I took it, it was 2 to 4 IU range. I only took 6 to 8. And even that, the lower, but still pushed me to like a 500 IU. Lethargy.
How long?
I had tried it for durations of cycles. 3 months was probably.
Did you have lethargy the whole day, or was it just like if you took it in the morning, you feel that way till got in the afternoon?
With the doses I was using and splitting it, by
why is that?
Seems to have a very connection with sleeps, GH pulse, sleep, and people seemingly pretty aging in seemingly deep sleep metric, precipitously too. I think this is the biggest case to be made. Full attenuation of cognitive sleep. If somebody who gets significant enhancement in sleep metrics, track that. It's I can't imagine you can extrapolate from there. Somebody who you have a crashed IGF and sleep as a result. Clear literature. You should see Allen Pearson at some level. Because you don't shit to the top.
But you're saying with a higher IGF margin, does that mean you would think that you'd be sleeping better based on that argument?
Yeah. But it also gets conflated with meds too, because the finger account. It's also findings of it. In general, people peptides even and that their sleep is seemingly enhanced, deeper, more restful.
Yet they're more.
Yeah. So
almost, is it possible then that the GH is inducing too long sleep? Like you're sleeping a lot during the day, but you're sleeping not at night, but then it's carrying over to the day. Like there's a hangover of sleep.
Potentially, it seems to be a hormone bit rejuvenative sleep, and I can't imagine like that much. It's like the time you to cover and rest the deepest and the highest spike of GH. Like it seems to be. I think it's something you can at least extrapolate as a interesting anecdote that I can understand why I might be tired. Deepest point of rest is also the time this is simultaneously highest endogenously. If I'm manually creating at least half conditions that are associated with I get the sleep, I can manually use that myself. Efficient or heavy. But as far as time justification for it, if you were trying to use it for like this or enhanced sleep, what the conditions are, we're going to be at a certain level. So often logic would think, in my opinion, probably put bed, given that you're not the same output using exogenous GH. I'm using, let's just say, all GH in the morning. I'm going to exercise to try to use the fat. Yeah, which is not a bad idea. There's definitely at least I think, a justification that dose, essentially all of it, when you're on GH output suppressed, that you would actually out be better. It depends on goals too. Enhancement of sleep. Say, without a shadow of a doubt, you will be that feedback loop with your natural output. Get the best of both worlds.
And so, would you say more people today would be using two peptide receptor approach? Okay.
I think among in the clinics, sure. But in the underground bodybuilding, saying super physical, typically try and find gauge, and if they can't get it, so it's
they're putting F to 500.
Yeah, that it would be liquid amount for enhancement would be deemed higher than naturally achievable based on.
Let's detour for a moment just to talk about bodybuilding before I want to kind of go about anabolics, and then maybe this will be a nice dovetailing. So, in my gym, I have a lot of pictures of bodybuilders, black and white. There's just a real clear difference between Frank Zane, Schwarzenegger, Sergio Oliva, to Jay Cutler and Ronnie Coleman, and I don't know when that jump took place. Maybe Lee Haney, maybe Yates, but somewhere in the real trend, Zeke, and not to debate which of those is the best. I think it's for which era of Zeke was the most, was their favorite. But what is the, if you sort of think of the things that can impact your physique, genetics, okay, that's not changing. Nutrition and knowledge of nutrition, that's clearly training, and that's clearly drug use, it's clearly evolved. And then maybe just even injection. I've talked to bodybuilders today who say that they're actually injecting compounds in their muscles to alter shape. They're injecting like fats into muscles to actually create some sculpting. So that, again, that's something new. That one aside, as far as so of the three, evolution of training, evolution of nutrition, evolution of drugs, how would you rate the relative balance of those three, or the difference of a 1970s physique versus a physique today of the best bodybuilders?
I say nutrition problem.
And how much emphasis on each of them? 50, 40, 10?
Because these get scrutinized. Because it's like, I'm going to put a number on it. Like, how do you No, because a lot of these things don't live without the other, so you can definitely heavier and say, well, nothing, the drug. I would say just in order, if you did perfect diet, perfect, all of have now ceiling as 50 to lower, depending on height, depending on kinetic response. And by the way, I don't want to forget on the pH stuff that is interesting. Acromegalic patients, the incidence of death seems to be vascular, significant cancer incidence. So if there's anything to discern from significantly chronically elevated IGFs into even 40 years old, congestive heart failure, as opposed to.
That's really interesting. So not even sclerotic disease. They're also probably. I have to look into this. Actually, it's a very good point. I should look at the acromegaly. Sure.
And one of the interesting things is how much fluid retention they hold.
Oh, I think I know what it was. Something had an efficiency reduction due to trash buildup.
I'm guessing maybe section. Okay, so you're putting drugs at the top of the list, and then nutrition, then training, the order you have. So let's talk about the drug use. So, spoken to 70s bodybuilders, and if they're being honest with me, and I have reason to believe it,
good thing.
Yeah, like the way they care. I was shocked how little drug is the best of the best. And we're talking like 1 to 200 milligrams of testosterone, 8 weeks at a time, 8 on, 8 on. In other words, okay, so that's your view?
It's most certainly, and you're taking a female HRT animal, it's like 5-4. Or like staying old, see the time. But those dosages possible to wrap your head around producing an outcome. Well, stay natural. I too went into the idea of consistent stories to make it one shot of pre bacon. It's just not an outcome. So maybe on the hyper extreme outlier scenario, guy who weekly dosage 200 milligrams using he may hyper respond huge. But I would say the majority of the guys can be still slugging people about
even back in the 70s.
Yeah, it's just certain people those their abuse, seemingly, and it's their host spoke at peak room count. It's incredible. Guy used thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds. I can understand why you would arrive at that logic to take that because there's other ones. Keeping it against the guy at the highest level, relatively high stakes. You see a guy like Arnold getting movie role stuff. It's peak of achievement as a bodybuilder back. He can do anything. Emulate presumably what he was doing, something of that nature. To think that you're not going to escalate your dose past animal and have you worship everyone because yourself.
Yeah, I feel like I heard a video recently of Tom Platz discussing this.
He changed the story. With that said, his original breakdown simply still, but back in the 80s, he, you could tell he was even back then, and with the situation very. He spoke, but more recently, that it's like okay, maybe expect you exactly what you say your peak dose.
Well, at the other end of the spectrum, I've spoken to one bodybuilder who, and I couldn't, but he said at one point he was up to, ready for it, 50 grams of testosterone in a week.
Man, you might inject that much.
I mean, I was like, how is that possible?
Alright, guys.
How
That's it for today.
are you managing?
I think a lot of people.
Real been fun. It's been real fun.
Oftentimes you have
See y'all tomorrow.
TRT even. What's your dose? Like, you know,